So this is Jacqui. We got talking at the gym, didn't we? Because you've been watching my videos.
Yeah.
And it turns out you were a real face back in the day. And you've been helping me get people as well, haven't you? Because you know everyone, don't you?
Well, no, it's more about I've been really impressed with what you're doing.
Yeah.
I can see that it comes from a good value place.
Yeah.
And it nudged a kind of interest and a curiosity in me because I really admire the bit of a story you've told me about you and what you're doing with it.
Yeah.
And I really like the way you've been growing it organically. And I suppose the most important thing for me is, you know, there's something special about ordinary stories and some people going on to do extraordinary things.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's beauty in the ordinary.
Yeah.
And we don't hear it often in stories. So it's not all about, you know, the people that went on into big bands and became brilliantly worldwide famous or, you know, put on events and so on. It's the other stories as well that we don't often get to hear.
So the thing that fascinates me is that, I mean, I started going about, well, I was there at the start of like the house music, but what I loved was that it was ordinary local people. And you know, I probably lacked confidence at school, and then I went into the Hacienda, and then I felt like somebody, and then I went on that scene, and it changed my life. And I still believe now that people I met from them days, it's inspired them to do things with life, because they became someone in that environment and realised that it could be someone. And
yeah, I totally understand that. I think, so you mentioned about the Hacienda there. So I think that was an opportunity for us who were local kids, mostly in working class areas on the edge of the city centre of Manchester. I mean, we're both from Salford.
Yeah.
You know, 2-3 miles out of the city centre of Manchester.
Yeah.
And I know for me, you know, we were so young. I got into it before house music from being at school, and me and my friend Sue would listen to, and Steve would listen to Stu Allan.
Yeah.
His sold out, and that was like, we became engrossed in it, and we'd tape it on a Sunday night, bring it in on Monday, play it in at break time, play it at lunchtime, and you know, we got really switched on to cool soul music and then a bit of funk, and we were like 14ish then, and then somehow me and my friend Sue, we somehow we got into a bit of hip hop as well, but not massively. But it kind of led to finding out about the breakdance scene in Manchester that was just started.
Yeah.
In fact, we used to get the bus into town, and we found out about the gallery all dayers, which was like brilliant dancers, amazing music. I remember go walking in there with Sue, and we were like, "Are we in New York? What is this?" And we were school kids, and then we'd get the bus home. So it was soul music, and it was a bit of funk and a bit hip hop, more like the electro thing.
Yeah.
And then, and then I don't remember the first time or so going into the Hacienda. I just, you know, it all kind of merged into one at the beginning. But that thing you said at the beginning about, you know, you said for some of us it can make us feel, you know, that we can be whatever. I'm not sure what was it you said.
You felt like somebody. So I feel like, going back to the video I did with Dermo, he said that everyone was equal on that scene. I always saw the people on the scene as really special.
Yeah.
And I think that quite a lot of people I know from them days have gone on to do things with life.
Yeah. So going back then, you know, we were me and my best mate Sue, who I'm still out with now, You know, we were kind of 15, 16, going into town on nights out. We started, going from the all dayers. You know, and we were two Salford girls going into other places like that. We used to go to a place called Strawberries and so on. And we didn't know anyone else in Salford where we were at that age going in. So it was something different, and that was the exciting thing about it. It was, you know, I talk about place and time. You know, at that point in the mid-80s, living in Salford, working class community, working class family, it was grey and drudgy. There wasn't much excitement to go. And interestingly, as a kid, I used to travel around the city and go to different youth clubs. Sometimes I'd go off on my own and go to like the one in Langworthy Flats youth club, and they played quite a bit of soul actually and a bit of disco. And then I'd go to kind of West Salford youth club. So maybe there was something in already there to be explored that kind of picked an interest. But then, you know, going back to then getting into the kind of Hacienda years, the rave years, the party scene. What was massively exciting was it was all, every night and every day. It felt like we were, when I reflect back, everything was like in the present moment.
Yeah.
Because it unfolded day by day and night by night. There wasn't a schedule of anything like the kids now are, you know, the scheduling the holidays for next year and the scheduling the night out and they communicate on the social media and so on. It was very different from us. You know, you'd go out, you wouldn't really think about how you're going to get home that night, and you'd go out with hardly any money in your pocket. But you know, you'd and meet this thing about meeting other people. So, you know, there was probably two other girls from Salford who were around at the beginning of that scene. And the rest of the people I would meet were from, you know, I'd say 2/3 were working class kids on the edge of the city, you know, similar circumstances for me. But I remember meeting girls from like private schools in the Hacienda.
Yeah.
You know, and we became all good mates together, and what the girls clicked together. There wasn't any kind of jealousy about anything because we wasn't really interested in the boys. It was more about exciting night out, and then I'd get to meet other kids who were like at art college, some were doing like graphic design and so on, and you know, I wasn't meeting any other people from my community who were doing quite exciting things like that. So in a way it opened up the world a little bit.
Yeah.
And on top of that, it was just dead exciting because it was, you know, everything was in the present moment. You'd go out, you'd meet the lights. In fact, when I was thinking about this the other day, I remember, you know, the videos in the Hacienda, and it's like I'd never thought of that ever before, and you took for granted a lot of it.
I've never seen it since.
Yeah. Anyway, that was just a little aside, really.
But
somebody worked on that, and you know that was somebody's role, and you know, and I suppose you know, as it kind of unfolded, my mates became really, really good mates quite quickly from all over.
Yeah.
And you know, you'd be in there on a Wednesday, you'd be in there on a Friday, you'd be in there on a Saturday right from the beginning. And you'd be on the phone, at home on your phone, obviously no mobile phones, swapping numbers, writing numbers down. And, you know, and I use this saying, people who were born here and were lucky enough to be at a place and a point in time. But there were other people who came at that very beginning who were what I class as drawn here. You know, some were drawn here because of that excitement, and some might have just been because of sort of personal family life, and they ended up here. But that interest of meeting other people that were probably not that like me was interesting for me.
Yeah.
As I say, there was girls doing from good schools, living this arty life, and it was like, wow, how can you have a life like, you know, an art life? Well, you can. And I suppose the confidence then of, you know, we owned it, that was our place. We owned that scene. I don't just mean the Hacienda, I mean, you know, going out. There's I suppose there's a working class confidence in me that kind of kept being built on, this is our scene.
It was like being in a different world, wasn't it? To going out in Eccles where everyone wanted to fight when you left school, to going in a place like the Hacienda, it was like being in a different world, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was just like you could be anyone you wanted to be.
Yeah, and I think had music not been a way out really to experience other things, the other options would have been, as you say, going to the working class pubs in Salford and going to the bingo with your family, or not interest. It wasn't of any interest to me, so it was dead exciting. It was unfolding every time, and then almost like England opened up.
Yeah.
Because I remember meeting a gang of kids from Blackpool really early, probably 88 or so, and they were really switched on. And then a gang of kids from Carlisle who would come over all the time, and I mean a load of them.
Yeah.
Then mates from Leeds who I'm still really good mates with, Buckley, Tony Annan. I met him a bit later on, but they were from kind of Yorkshire who were coming over the hills for nights out, and then going on from, I suppose. Oh, and also, we would go out, and I would have like bright red tracky bottoms on and a yellow hoodie, and kickers, and I'd painted the kickers. Me and Marie, who was around them from Wigan, we both bought kickers and decided to paint them. I had yellow, flower, whatever. But then, as that kind of music moved on a bit and that style moved on, I used to take like a change of a hoodie and put it in a bag underneath the a hole and where the stage was in the dance floor, because you'd be that sweaty afterwards. And you'd be going on somewhere else. That'd be like, I realised after a bit, I'm damp and I'm cold, and afterwards so I'd have a little change and whatever. But then I suppose and that was dead exciting. I used to go to Blackburn parties with my mate Eddie Reid. I know you've spoke to him recently.
Yeah.
And that was brilliant experience, because he had a VW camper van. I'm not sure if it was yellow, which was pretty cool. And we had some mad times going to places like that. Broke down as well a couple of times.
He broke down on the way to Blackburn.
Yeah, he. You can ask him this story, double check it, but I'm sure he said we got helped by the police, and he reckons it was because I was there and they were being quite polite, because that's what he reckons anyway.
So the police helped you get to the rave?
I think they helped him with his car, and we went, yeah. In fact, that happened another time a few years later. When the scene around Manchester started to get a little bit dark and grunge, and not grunge in the music, but dark and moody, I think. We'd gone to other places to have a look, like Conspiracy and Thunderdome and so on, and they were dark and moody places then. But we were going to... we went to kitchens quite a few times, and that was, and I remember, it being cold and whatever. But as things progressed and moved on, I started to go to other places then, because the vibe changed a little bit for me, and I would go to Leeds a lot. We're getting into kind of from 88, 89, getting to around 90 now.
Where did you go in Leeds? Can you remember?
Used to go to my mate's place, Back to Basics a lot. It was brilliant. It was really kind of uplifting, and it kind of took over for me personally from Manchester a bit.
I bet you need a DJ, didn't you? Did you?
Well, some of the people who went on to be brilliant DJs and well-known, successful DJs were at the start. So, we kind of all got to know each other as mates as 16 and 17 and 18-year-old kids.
Yeah.
So, in fact, one of my mates who became a DJ, who is still a DJ now, I remember saying to him, God, it took me like probably 5 years to realise he was quite a decent DJ, because he was obviously getting gigs and I wasn't probably going to them. And I remember going, God, you're doing all right. But I think it was more about it being that organic thing, them going off and doing their own creative things. But still wanting to have a good time outside of that as well. So the Leeds place, I think, took over when Manchester got a bit dark for me. We'd go there and have a nice time. Met loads of really cool people up there. They were fantastic times then. And then spent a lot of time going over from Leeds, a lot of time going over to Liverpool with our mates who would also come up to Manchester a lot as well. Nottingham, places like that, and London, and London as well. I remember getting into like the early Boys Own stuff, and so and then at that point in Manchester as well, I didn't really go into Hacienda for a bit because I then was going to places like Most Excellent, so that kind of more kind of Balearic vibe by then had come in and was much more attractive to me. I didn't want to be in a scene where people had kind of crashed our space to capitalise on it and make money and change the atmosphere by being threatening. I was never interested in that. And actually, it was our space that, so, crack on and we're off.
There was always something else you could find though on there. So I thought that Hacienda, I think most people agree that it went to pot in 91. But I really liked the Village when the Paradise Factory opened.
Yeah.
And then Mantos was 89, 90, I think, wasn't it? But when the Paradise really took off, then there was Mets, there was Prague 5, there was the phone's going.
I thought I'd switch that off.
Yeah, it's all right.
Should we let it play out?
Let it play out, yeah.
You can start again.
What's your tune?
Don't know.
I thought you'd have a rave track.
An old Nokia.
Yeah.
And then I'll
back in the
switch
day,
it off.
No, leave it. It's all right. There you go.
So go on.
Yeah.
What was?
We were saying like how the Village evolved, and then when you said then about Leeds, so I lived in Leeds for a while. I think 93, but then you had Soak, Back to Basics.
Yeah.
The Pleasure Room was really good. Vague.
Yeah.
And Liverpool Cream.
Absolutely, yeah. So we were in those same spaces at the same time. I think I had a year living in Leeds in, I don't know if it was 91, 92. But at that point, when I was going up to Leeds more and definitely Liverpool Cream more, and I say still really good mates I've got from those days, the best of times. And we kind of left, some of us who were there at the beginning kind of left Manchester a little bit, or certainly the Hacienda a little bit then. But that's when, Ibiza opened up for me. I think it might have been 90. And I went, a gang of mates went for the first time and on a 2-week holiday, and I think it was June, and I said, I'm staying. And I stayed, out of the gang of us, I was the only one. I stayed all summer, stayed till mid-September, met right away, kids from London, kids from all over really, and that just opened up a massive world really.
What year was that?
That was my first summer was 90.
Yeah.
Alfredo, the music was amazing. Coup was amazing. Amnesia had never kind of experienced anything like that, of being out and in places with no roof on and the weather's gorgeous at night, dancing with people from all over Europe, Italians, French, obviously loads of Spanish, different ages. It was fantastic. It really was fabulous. That. It was absolutely fantastic, and again, there were. I think there was a couple of people from Manchester kind of then, but a mate's still with some lads from like Bethnal Greenway, Camden, and then that led to then over the years to now we still stay in touch a lot, and we meet up. Like this summer I went to Florence with my daughter, and we met up with a mate from London and his son, and the other summer we did it in Italy, in can't remember wherever in Italy, but it just the world kind of unfolded even bigger then, because at the start it was England unfolded and got bigger and smaller, but then Europe did, and probably a good sort of 10 years of going to Ibiza for summers having a ball, and you know, and back, you know, because we were so young. Don't forget, we were left school, at college, then you know at uni years, you know, so there was a lot of freedom then, and then it led to other places that were opening up. You know, I think I went to Goa in '91 in the winter for a month, and you know, for a few years I went off to Thailand then in the early '90s, and it's like, you know, you'd come back to Salford, you just come back a changed person really, because you know you get to see things.
As I'm doing the videos, I'm realising that when I left school, that we were part of, we lived amongst one of the biggest cultural explosions of you know, like there was the 60s, there was punk, but that acid house, it really changed the landscape, didn't it? It changed everything, didn't it? And we lived amongst that, didn't we?
Yeah, and that kind of, you know, that kind of quantum change, that kind of transformational phases and changes as they kind of organically grew. And we never knew then that today, you know, I might be on a train listening to an advert. In fact, it happened to me today. I was actually in the car. You know, an advert came on and it was 808 State.
Was that?
Yeah, on the radio. And, you know, we never knew then that the kind of massively industrialised, globalised, you know, world would be, you know, played to a backdrop of that kind of electronic music. It was absolutely it's bonkers when you think about it.
I know the charts, we used to take the spinning charts in school, and then we'd say, that sounds ridiculous, house. And I remember my mate Greenie saying to me, no, it's good. And then going in, spinning, hearing a house record, thinking, it sounds good in the shop, and still couldn't make my mind up what I thought of it. Yeah. But who would have thought that, like, is it 40 years on? It's like still going house music.
It's
still.
And when you talked about, you know, like the 60s or whatever, and you know, for me at that point in time, in the kind of getting on to the late 80s into the very early 90s, I said to you before about, for me, it's important about place and time, and I'm not a sociologist, but you know, I was living as you were. You know, we were living in Salford. I was living in a flat on the old Langworthy flats. You know, and houses around there were in negative equity. It was depressing. I lived on a corner where the traffic lights were, and there was a point for about a year or so, where it became car crime capital of Europe. And if you pulled up and you had a handbag on the passenger seat, there's kids on bikes, you know, there's a good chance on these little spots that you were. So they were, you know, when you put it into kind of that point in time in the communities that we were from, then having these creative spaces and this amazing music, you know, was absolutely super exciting, because it got us out of that. There was nothing of interest for us there.
What were some of us? I'm just remembering as I'm talking to you, I forgot the name of it. The flats just outside Eccles, and then I remember reading in the Eccles Journal, like something that it was like seen as a slum and like one of the most poorest areas in Europe. And I remember there was graffiti like "Get us out."
Was it the old Ladywell flats?
Yeah, Ladywell. That was it.
Yeah. I rented a flat there.
Did you?
And then I went on to rent a flat for 10 years on the old Langworthy flats, but that was in more in the mid-90s. And they were like fun times there, because mates from the Hacienda were also renting there. So Jay Adamson and Kinky Calf rented a flat nearby, and we were always out with them anyway. Sunbathing on the green, on the grass in front all summer, mates coming round. I shared a flat with a lad called Darren, and he got into more kind of jungle music at that point. That wasn't for me, but his mates would all kind of come back. And Buckley lived there with Cass. I've not seen Cass for donkey's years. I wonder what's happened to Cass. So that was a great little mini scene because it was on the edge of Regent Road, on the border of Salford and Manchester. You know, just that half a mile.
Yeah.
So we used to get kind of swan taxis into town, or swan taxis everywhere. These
You used to like
all over.
opposite the Ritz, you'd kick the shutter. Do you remember that?
No.
You kick the shutter and then they put someone to pop out like taxi, please.
No, I don't.
Yeah,
No.
opposite the Ritz.
Wow.
That was fun.
So yeah, you know, a point in time is really important. Coming out of the late 80s, you know, I'm really interested in, you know, people taking power into their own hands and so on. And I suppose coming through that scene and being, you know, slap bang in the middle of it, built a kind of inner confidence about, you know, we can do what we want. This is our thing, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been amazing.
Do you know, and I keep thinking about this conversation we had in the gym where you were telling me about the Blackburn Rave and then the sun came up. You watched the sun come up in the morning.
Yeah.
And then you were saying that you remember that for the rest of your life.
Yeah. And not just that one, you know, you know, I'm now into, you know, I'll be forever chasing sunsets as well, you know, not so much sunrises anymore, but you know, the beauty of you know, nature was sparked probably from Ibiza, really, of you know, seeing the most beautiful coasts and sunsets and some sunrises. But I've got another memory actually of being in Kew in Ibiza, and they had an open air park with a dome on the top. I remember going up on my own at one point because there was a nice breeze up there. You know, and I remember, and the sun was coming up there, and again, it was just another moment. It was just like, you know, it was just so beautiful, man.
Yeah. So I feel like we're coming up to like the half hour spot, and I always try and like think of a track that takes you back to them days.
Oh God, that takes me. But well, there's loads, isn't there? And there's loads at different points as the scene evolved, really.
Yeah.
But so I'm not going to say it's my favourite one, but I'll say, you know, when I hear the beginning of it, it takes me back to kind of that earlier bit, which is Electribe 101.
Oh, wow, I've not listened to that for years. Yeah.
It's the first sound when it comes on, it really does kind of take me back. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to look for that now. Was that the band Electribe?
Yeah.
Is that, what can you remember what the track was?
I think well, I know it's Talking With Myself, yeah. But it's that
You should have put it as ringtone. So I'm gonna stop recording now. So thanks so much for doing this with me.
Oh no, and thank you, and genuinely, you know, you're a brilliant storyteller, not just facilitating other people's stories, but your own story's brilliant, and you've got a lot of people who are supporting you.
And some real legends like yourself.